My name is Lily, and I'm 22 years old. At first glance, it might seem like I have the whole world ahead of me. Youth, ambition, the promise of a future filled with limitless possibilities. But trust me, if you had told me a few years ago that I'd be here, living under the roof of my estranged uncle Nathan, I would have laughed. I would have laughed, and then I would have cried because this was never the life I imagined for myself. You see, I'm studying graphic design. I pour every ounce of my being into my work, finding solace in my art when nothing else seems certain. The rhythm of the brush on canvas, the tap of keys as I design digital worlds, the creative chaos, it's my escape, my refuge. I try to keep my head above water, working long hours on freelance projects that barely pay the bills, hoping for the day when my talent will be recognized, when I'll have enough to live on my own, to breathe freely. But it's a struggle. More often than not, I find myself drowning in deadlines, surrounded by half-finished projects, questioning if any of this will ever amount to anything. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Each of your shares is not only a motivation for us but also contributes to spreading value to the community. If you find this content useful, don't forget to watch the whole video, like, subscribe, and share with someone you think needs to hear this too. The truth is, life hasn't been kind to me. When my parents divorced when I was still a child, it sent everything spiraling out of control. My world, once full of warmth and security, crumbled into pieces. I moved from place to place, each time hoping that maybe, just maybe, I would find a place to belong. A place where I wouldn't feel so lost, so alone. Each time, though, that sense of belonging slipped through my fingers like water, and I ended up back at square one. And now, here I am, living in my Uncle Nathan's cramped, quiet house in the outskirts of the city. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. In fact, when I first moved in, I thought it would just be another temporary stop along the way. Another pit stop before I could figure out my next move. But time has a way of rewriting our stories. I thought I could keep my distance, maintain the semblance of independence, but it's hard to do that when you're living under someone else's roof. Nathan's house is small, filled with too many memories of a family I never quite understood. There's an uncomfortable quiet in the air, the kind that makes you feel like you're intruding, even when you're the one who's been invited. Every day, I wake up hoping for something to change, for a breakthrough. I tell myself that this will be temporary, that one day I'll have my own place, my own life. But for now, I have to learn to make peace with this strange reality. Because no matter how much I try to push it away, this is my life now. And maybe, just maybe, I can find a way to make it my own. Here I am, standing in the midst of everything life has thrown at me, and if I'm being completely honest, I've had to learn how to navigate through a labyrinth of unexpected twists and turns. Every step I take feels like I'm moving along an unfamiliar path, one I never could have anticipated, but somehow I've managed to keep going. I think the one thing that has always kept me anchored through it all is my love for design, a passion that burns deep within me, and the undeniable need to keep pushing forward, even when everything else feels like it's falling apart. But, as I've come to realize, life has a cruel way of adding layers of complexity just when I think I've gotten a handle on things. In the midst of my turbulent college years, feeling more adrift than I ever have before, my world shifted yet again. My mom, the one person I always turned to for comfort and guidance, had to leave for work, and suddenly I was left with no foundation to stand on. I needed somewhere to stay, somewhere safe to ground myself, and the timing could not have been worse. That's when Nathan, my uncle, the one constant in my life who I've always leaned on for support, became my steady anchor. He was there when I had no one else to turn to, offering me not just a place to stay, but a sense of stability I had desperately craved. Nathan and his wife Victoria had been married for a few years and lived in a gorgeous house tucked away in the peaceful countryside, far removed from the chaos of city life. I thought I was walking into a temporary change, just another fleeting chapter to help me find my way, but in reality, it was so much more than that. I had no idea that this small shift in my life would eventually uncover truths and stir up emotions I never expected, making me realize just how wrong I was about everything. At first, I was so certain that I would eventually find my way back to some semblance of normalcy. I convinced myself that, in time, everything would fall into place. Nathan was always there for me, steadfast, thoughtful, patient, and above all, kind. He embodied everything a young girl like me could ever want in an uncle. But he was more than that. He was my mentor, my unwavering guide, a constant presence that steadied me through the chaos of life. He wasn't just family. He was a pillar, a beacon that illuminated the path through the darkness of my uncertainties. I looked up to him with an awe that was both reverential and deeply trusting. He taught me how to ride a bike with endless patience, how to fix things around the house with a gentle touch, and when I turned 18, he gifted me my very first car, a symbol of his belief in my independence. So, when my mom needed someone to look after me, it seemed natural that Nathan was the one I should go to. He was the rock I could always rely on, a steady anchor in the storms of my life. But Nathan wasn't the only person I was moving in with. Victoria, his wife, had been a part of the picture for a while now, and although they had been married for a couple of years, I wasn't sure what to expect from her. She was older than Nathan, and from the moment I met her, there was an unfamiliar chill that settled in the air whenever she was around. It wasn't overt hostility, but something subtle, something that made me feel like I didn't truly belong in their world. It was like I was an outsider, an intruder in a space that wasn't really mine. In the beginning, I kept to myself, retreating to the guest room at the far end of the house, keeping my distance and trying my best not to stir up any trouble. I was a stranger in their home, and I didn't know how to navigate that awkwardness. But as time went on, something began to shift. Victoria, in her own way, started to offer me advice. Small gestures that seemed harmless at first. How to cook, how to clean, how to take better care of myself. It was her way of drawing me in, of slowly trying to make me feel like I was a part of their world. And while we never became close, never best friends, the tension between us began to ease, or so I thought. But lately, something strange and utterly inexplicable has been happening. The more time I spent with Nathan, the more I felt this magnetic pull, a force within me that seemed to draw me closer to him with every passing day. At first, I tried to dismiss it as nothing more than a fleeting thought. He was my uncle, for heaven's sake. How could I possibly feel this way? But it wasn't just a passing thought. His smile, so warm, so genuine, lingered in my mind long after it faded. The way his fingers brushed against mine when he thought I wasn't paying attention, the way his eyes held mine just a little longer than normal, it all felt different. So different. The connection we shared was unlike anything I had ever felt before, not even with my mother. It was a deeper, more intense bond, charged with an undercurrent of unspoken tension that I couldn't quite understand. Every time we were alone, the air between us felt thick with it, as if some invisible force was pulling us closer together, whether I wanted it or not. I didn't want to admit it, not even to myself, but the truth was undeniable. Something was shifting, something unsettling and foreign, and I couldn't ignore it. I know what you're thinking. Ava, what are you saying? He's your uncle. This is insane. And I understand that. I thought the exact same thing when the feelings first began to surface. But no matter how much I tried to dismiss it, to rationalize it away as nothing more than a figment of my imagination, the feelings remained, unshakable, persistent, undeniable. There was a bond between us, something that went beyond family, something that ran deeper than anything I could have ever expected. I tried so hard to convince myself that it was just in my head, that I was reading into things, that I was just a confused girl with too much time on her hands. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the reality of what was happening between us. It was like trying to outrun a storm. It was always there, waiting to catch up. Then one evening things reached a breaking point. After dinner, I had retreated to my room to work on a design project when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Nathan had been napping for hours, and Victoria was out with friends. The house was eerily quiet, and for some reason my heart began to race. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I heard the soft creak of a door opening. Nathan's bedroom door. Froze. Should I leave him to rest, or should I go in and check on him? It seemed like a simple decision, but in that moment, something urged me to go toward him, something that I couldn't explain. I opened the door slowly, careful not to disturb him, and found him lying there, peacefully asleep. One arm was tucked behind his head, and the soft light from the window created gentle shadows across his face, making him appear almost untouchable, like something too perfect to reach. I stood there for a moment, watching him, my heart pounding in my chest, torn between the urge to stay and the overwhelming sense that I was crossing a line. Something in that moment shifted. Something I couldn't go back from. My heart was racing. I could feel my face flush and my pulse quicken. I had never felt this way before. Maybe I just wanted to look at him, or maybe it was something more. I didn't know. My thoughts were interrupted when I accidentally knocked over a vase near his bed. The sound made Nathan stir. His eyes opened, and for a brief moment we locked gazes. There was confusion in his eyes, but something else. Two things I couldn't quite name. He blinked a few times, trying to focus on me, then let out a groggy laugh. "Ava, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. My heart was racing as I struggled to find the right words. I didn't want to look like I was snooping, but I didn't know how to explain myself. My mouth went dry. "I didn't mean to wake you," I stammered, feeling embarrassed. Nathan sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. He smiled at me, the same kind, patient smile he always gave, but today there was something different in his eyes, something that made my heart race. He studied me for a moment before speaking again. "It's okay," he said gently. "You know you can always talk to me, Ava. I'm here for you." I nodded, but my mind was spinning. I didn't know how to deal with this strange feeling. The room felt heavy, and I could feel my breath coming faster. "I just wanted to talk," I whispered. Nathan's smile faded just a little, and I thought I saw a brief hesitation in his eyes before it vanished. He patted the bed next to him. "Come here. Then you can always talk to me," he said warmly. I stood there for a moment, unsure, but something inside me pushed me forward. Without thinking, I sat next to him. The tension between us was thick, heavier than ever. I could feel the heat of his body next to mine, his cologne filling the air. We were so close that I could hear his breathing and feel the rise and fall of his chest with each breath. My heart raced again, and slowly, almost in slow motion, I looked up at him. Our faces were so close that I could feel his warmth. His gaze was soft, unsure, but there was something else, a spark that made my skin tingle. "Ava, are you okay?" Nathan asked gently. Before I could answer, I leaned in closer to him. My pulse was racing, and my breath caught in my chest. I couldn't explain it, but everything felt so intense, as though the air itself was charged. Nathan didn't pull away. His eyes held mine with quiet intensity. He didn't speak, but his breath quickened, mirroring mine. The room felt warmer, and the silence between us deepened with unspoken words. My mind was in a whirlwind. Everything had led to this moment. I couldn't stop myself. Slowly I leaned in. My lips trembled, as if I were in a dream. They brushed against his at first. It was uncertain, tentative, but then as his lips met mine, soft and gentle, I couldn't stop myself. My mind screamed for me to stop, but my body refused. I needed this. I wanted this. Nathan's hand cupped my cheek, urging me closer. His other hand rested beside us, grazing my skin. I could feel the heat of his touch. The kiss deepened, and soon it was hard to tell where his lips ended and mine began. The rest of the world disappeared. It was just the two of us, caught in this undeniable connection. My mind raced with confusion, guilt, but also with a strange sense of rightness. What were we doing? Why did it feel so necessary? There were no words to explain it, no logic behind it. He pulled away for just a moment, his forehead resting against mine. Our breathing was heavy, each breath shaky and slow. I could feel his pulse against my skin, matching the rapid beat of my own heart. "Ava!" His voice was soft, strained with something deeper. "We shouldn't." But I wasn't sure I agreed. Something inside me refused to acknowledge any reason to stop. Slowly, I reached for his hand, intertwining my fingers with his. He didn't pull away. His fingers curled around mine, holding on to me just as tightly as I was holding on to him. Our eyes met, and for a long moment we didn't speak. The weight of everything hung between us. Should we? Could we? My hand instinctively moved to the back of his neck, pulling him closer. Kissed him again. This time there was no hesitation, no fear. Just the overwhelming need to stay close to him, to feel his presence. Nathan's hand slid down my back, drawing me closer. The contact of our bodies made everything feel incredibly intense. I didn't know where this was heading, but I didn't care. I wanted to stay in this moment, where only the two of us existed. My heart pounded in my chest as his lips moved to my neck, pressing soft kisses against my skin. I could feel his breath against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before. Intimate, consuming, and deeply wrong yet thrilling. In a way I couldn't fully grasp. His voice came to me in a murmur, low and thick with desire, a sound that seemed to vibrate against my skin. "You're sure about this?" he asked. His words carrying a depth of hesitation, of tenderness that made my heart ache. "I don't want to hurt you." His concern was palpable, but it only made the pull between us feel more complicated, more intense. I could feel the heat of his breath on my skin, and it sent shivers through me, making every nerve inside me hum with a yearning I couldn't control. I closed my eyes, my pulse pounding in my ears as I tried to gather the strength to speak, to form words, but it was so hard. Every part of me screamed to stop, to pull away, to cling to reason and the world outside this room. But something inside me was stronger. The longing inside me was an insatiable fire, one I couldn't douse, no matter how much I tried to force it out. The need for him was overpowering, consuming. I didn't want to think anymore, didn't want to question anything, didn't want to deal with the overwhelming flood of emotions. I just wanted to lose myself in him, in this moment that felt like everything. "I'm sure," I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath, but it was all I could manage. My hands trembled slightly as they moved over his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingertips, the solid strength of him. "I want this, Nathan. I want you." The words hung in the air between us, fragile yet determined. And then, his lips found mine again, urgent and hungry this time, as though the kiss was a release of everything that had been building up between us. It was deeper than before, far more desperate, and the world outside of this moment faded entirely. There was no going back now. The room around us seemed to close in, the walls narrowing as the intensity of our connection grew, the light dimming as if the world itself was honoring the depth of what was happening between us. Every touch, every kiss, felt like a promise of something more, something neither of us could fully comprehend, yet both of us were trembling with the anticipation of exploring. My heart hammered in my chest, and I could feel his heartbeat matching mine, our bodies aligned in a rhythm that felt too natural to deny. Even as part of me recoiled, wanting to flee from the gravity of the situation, a far greater part of me surrendered completely, overwhelmed by the intensity of this connection. It wasn't just kissing anymore. It was a melding of souls, a union of more than just bodies. It was something beyond words, something too profound for language to capture, a bond that seemed to transcend the rules I had spent my life following. "I've wanted this for so long," Nathan whispered, his breath warm and ragged against my lips, as if the weight of those words were enough to carry the storm of emotions between us. I could barely understand him through the haze of my own feelings, but his words vibrated through me, igniting a fire that seemed to burn brighter with every passing second. My hands moved over him instinctively, tracing the outline of his muscles beneath his skin, feeling the heat of his body, the way he responded to me like we were two pieces of a puzzle that had always been meant to fit. There was no turning back now. All that existed was this pull between us, this force that was drawing us closer in a way neither of us could have ever expected nor understood, but both of us were ready to embrace, ready to surrender to it fully. Time seemed to stretch, to suspend itself, as we were lost in each other, suspended in the quiet rhythm of our kisses, the heat of our touches, and the electricity that buzzed between us. It was as if the world outside the room had ceased to exist, leaving only us, tangled together in this delicate, fragile moment. For the first time in my life, everything felt right, completely, undeniably right. In the stillness, in the vulnerability of it all, we weren't just uncle and niece anymore. We were two people, raw and unguarded, bound by something deeper, something more potent than anything I had ever experienced. There was an intensity in the air, a weight that hung between us, thick and palpable, like the earth itself had conspired to bring us together in that very instant. The silence stretched on, neither of us moving, neither of us speaking. Our bodies were frozen, yet the tension simmered, building with every passing second. I could hear my own breath, shallow and uneven, as I tried to calm the storm raging inside me. But just as I thought I might lose myself entirely in the moment, the silence was shattered by the unmistakable sound of the front door opening downstairs. My heart leaped into my throat, and a wave of panic surged through my chest. We froze, our eyes locking in a silent moment of terror and disbelief. What had we just done? What was this thing between us? The questions flooded me, but they were drowned by a far more pressing feeling. Guilt. It rushed over me in a torrent, washing away everything else, but mingled with it, tangled in a complicated mess, was a yearning I couldn't ignore, a deep, undeniable desire I wasn't ready to let go of. Before I could make sense of anything, I quickly pulled away from Nathan, my hands trembling, my pulse pounding in my ears. The world felt like it was spinning out of control. I was trapped in the space between the intoxicating moment we had just shared and the harsh reality that this was something neither of us could easily undo. Nathan remained motionless beside me, his eyes still locked on mine, his expression unreadable. I could feel the heat of him lingering in the air between us, the warmth of our shared closeness still pulsing in my veins. It was as if the world outside didn't exist, as if the only thing that mattered was the undeniable connection between us, even as it began to fray at the edges. "Ava!" Nathan's voice broke the silence, strained, as though he too was struggling to find his bearings. His gaze never wavered from mine, but before either of us could say anything more, the sound of footsteps echoed up the stairs. My heart sank with a heavy dread. I knew those footsteps. I knew the voice that followed. It was Victoria. A jolt of panic rushed through me as I scrambled to my feet, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. I didn't know what to do, where to go, how to make sense of any of it. My mind raced in frantic circles, but nothing felt like the right answer. The reality of what had just happened between Nathan and me hung in the air, suffocating me. Could I really face her? Could I face her knowing what had just transpired? The door to Nathan's room creaked open, and there she was, Victoria, standing in the doorway, her face a mix of surprise and confusion. Her eyes flickered between Nathan and me, her gaze sharp and calculating, as though trying to piece together the puzzle of the moment. The room seemed to hold its breath, the tension so thick I could almost taste it. "Ava, Nathan, what's going on here?" Her voice, usually steady and calm, trembled with uncertainty, but there was something else, something intuitive that told me she already knew. Something had happened, something that shouldn't have, and she could sense it. The blood drained from my face, leaving me cold and frozen in place. Victoria's presence was like a bucket of ice water, and in that instant everything, every fleeting moment of connection with Nathan, felt wrong, impossible to justify. My throat tightened as I struggled to find my voice, to make sense of what had just unfolded, but the words wouldn't come. They stuck in my chest, thick and choking. I opened my mouth, but all I could manage was a stammer. We. My voice faltered, broken and unsure. Nathan, too, sat there, looking just as lost and helpless as I felt. His hand ran through his hair, the familiar gesture a sign of his own embarrassment, his own struggle to find a way to explain the unexplainable. Victoria's gaze moved from Nathan to me, and I could feel the shift in the air, an unspoken understanding passing between us. It was as if, in that single fragile moment, the entire world had shifted. She knew something had happened, something that had crossed an unspoken line. But her reaction wasn't what I had expected. There was no anger, no fury. Instead, her eyes were filled with a deep, unsettling sadness, something darker and more painful than I could have imagined. It was as though she already understood the devastation of what was happening, even if she couldn't yet fully grasp the details. Victoria stepped into the room, closing the door behind her with a soft, deliberate click. The air grew heavier with each passing second. Her presence was commanding, unyielding, and the room seemed to collapse under the weight of it. The silence stretching so thin it felt like it might snap at any moment, the calm before a storm that I was certain was coming. "Ava, you need to understand something," Victoria said gently, her voice softer than I anticipated. "There's more to this than you realize. More than either of you understand." I looked at her, confusion flooding my mind. What did she mean? What more was there? The silence lingered even after Victoria left. Her words hung in the air, leaving a mark on both of us. Despite all the confusion, her calm understanding and offer of guidance gave me something unexpected: hope. Victoria wasn't angry. She didn't cast us aside. Instead, she gave us a chance that felt fragile and uncertain, but still there. I glanced at Nathan. His face was a mixture of guilt and confusion, and something else I couldn't quite identify. He was avoiding my gaze, his hands nervously rubbing together. I knew he felt the weight of what had happened, the way our worlds had collided unexpectedly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that none of this was anyone's plan. Things had unfolded beyond our control. What I knew for sure was that we couldn't ignore it. We couldn't pretend like nothing had happened. Victoria was right about that. The feelings and confusion, everything had to be addressed, and it had to be faced head-on. "Nathan," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "What do we do now?" Nathan looked at me, his eyes full of a mix of emotions. "I don't know, Ava. I don't know what to feel, what to think. I don't know if I should be angry, ashamed, or if I'm even allowed to feel anything at all." His voice cracked, revealing the internal struggle in his words. He was torn between the deep connection we had shared and his loyalty to Victoria, his wife. The situation couldn't be solved in one conversation. It wasn't that simple. I took a deep breath and walked toward him, closing the distance between us. I reached out to him to comfort him, but I wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do. I didn't know what was right anymore. "I don't think we'll figure everything out right now," I said softly, "but I think we need to talk, to be honest with each other. This is too complicated to ignore." Nathan nodded slowly, his expression serious but not angry. "Yeah, I know. I don't know where to start." I took his hand, the touch both comforting and charged with unspoken emotion. "We start by admitting what happened, what we felt, what we still feel, and then we figure out what comes next." He nodded again, his expression softening just a little. "It's not going to be easy, Ava, but I want to understand. I want to understand what's happening between us." I squeezed his hand, the contact both comforting and filled with unspoken emotions. "I don't have all the answers, Nathan. I don't know what happens next, but I'm not running from this. Not anymore." We sat in silence for a moment, both lost in thought, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. There was no clear way forward, no easy answers. The emotions, the confusion, it was all so overwhelming. But what Victoria had offered us was a lifeline, the space to face everything together, to confront the mess we had found ourselves in. I looked at Nathan again, and for the first time, a wave of understanding washed over me. In that moment, I realized that no matter what came next, we would face it together, with a raw and unflinching honesty. There was no easy answer, no magical solution that could erase the pain or simplify the tangled mess we found ourselves in, but there was something that shone through the fog: hope. A fragile but undeniable hope that perhaps amidst the wreckage, there could be room for understanding and, in time, healing. Maybe, just maybe, there could even be something more, something worth salvaging from the ruins of our fractured trust. I leaned back, my mind whirling with the endless possibilities of what could be, what might unfold between us. The future felt like a vast, uncharted ocean, both terrifying and alluring. And yet, no matter how overwhelming the unknown seemed, a part of me couldn't help but remember Victoria's words. Her calm, steady voice had resonated within me, offering a grace I hadn't expected. She hadn't turned away from us. She hadn't condemned us or unleashed judgment. Instead, she had extended an olive branch, an invitation to breathe, to process, and perhaps to begin again. In her quiet wisdom, she had opened a door I hadn't known existed, one that offered the possibility of redemption in a way I had never imagined. But what came after this? What would happen when the dust finally settled and we were left to pick up the pieces of ourselves? Could we be brave enough to face the full depth of our feelings, the ones we had buried for far too long? If we dared to speak them aloud, could we truly move forward, or would the weight of those emotions be too much for us to carry? These questions, the ones that gnawed at my soul, felt like burdens too heavy to bear in the present. They were future concerns, matters for another time. Right now, it was just Nathan and me, together, cocooned in the fragile silence that hung between us. The air was thick with the gravity of what had passed, and yet there was a quiet understanding, a silent agreement that, despite everything, we were still here. And we would figure this out. Maybe not today and maybe not tomorrow, but somewhere along the way we would. We had no guarantees, no promises of how things would unfold, but we had each other. And in that shared uncertainty, there was a strange comfort, because for all the chaos and the fear, we were willing to take that next step together. Thank you for staying with us. If you find it interesting and useful, please subscribe, like, and share so you don't miss the next video. Thanks.